So all of the things today are going to be done by factoring. So I know people love to factor because I remember teaching it to some of you the first time. We need to treat this like factoring. So I'm going to convert it. If it helps you to convert it and convert it back, do it. So first I'm going to put the square guy first. And I always kind of make sure the square guy is positive. It makes it a little easier. And so if it's not, we're going to have one that's not, and I'll show you what to do. And then I have the plus sign second, right? And if I add 1 to this side, I have minus 1 equals 0. Does everybody see that? So what I do to be able to see it better is I change the signs to x's. So this would be 2x squared plus 1x minus 1 equals 0. And I factor that. Sometimes it helps me to do that. So I factor that. This has a leading coefficient. So what we have to do is we have to say what times what is negative 2. I multiply the 2 and the negative 1 together, and added together is the middle number, which is a 1. So it needs to add together to be a 1, so it has to be a positive 2 and a negative 1, because that times what is negative 2, and added together is 1. So now I rewrite this equation as 2x squared. Always pick up the negative first, minus 1x plus 2x minus 1. And we're going to regroup. This is what we did a long time ago. So now in the first parentheses, we can pull out a x, and we get 2x minus 1. And in the second parentheses, I can't pull out anything. So I take out a 1, and I have 2x minus 1. And this would factor as 2x minus 1 times x plus 1, the 2 that got left out. But we've got signs involved. So everywhere I see an x, I put in a sign. So it's going to be 2 sine of theta minus 1 and times sine of theta plus 1. All I did is replaced the x's with the sign. So just like we used to do when it was like x plus 1 times x minus 2 equals 0, we would make each one of these equal to 0. Because when you're multiplying two things together and you get 0, one of them has to be a 0. So we make our factors equal to 0, and we leave the sign alone. So here it would be 2 sine of theta equals positive 1 when I move the 1 over, and then I divide by 2. Sine of theta equals 1/2. And there is no plus or minus here. We did not square root. So we're just leaving the sign alone. So over here it's just sine of theta equals negative 1. So now we pick up our unit circle and we say who has a sine of 1/2? And that would be 30 degrees and 150. And that's it. Those are the only ones with a positive 1/2 sign. Now who has a sine of negative 1? And that would be 270. So those are my answers, and put that on your homework sheet. All right, so this one looks very intimidating, but it's actually easier than the first one we did, okay? I just want to show you, just let the math take you there and don't freak out. So I'm going to evaluate the squared terms. This guy's negative here, this guy's negative, and this guy's negative. I prefer to have a positive tan squared. So I'm going to move the two negatives from the right to the left. And we're going to have, I'm going to write them in order. So minus tan squared of theta plus root 3 tan squared of theta plus tan squared of theta. And then we'll add that minus 3 tan of theta that was already on the left equals 0. So we have the same terms. We just moved them all to the left side. Okay, so I see that this is a minus tan and a plus tan squared, so they're gone. So all I'm really left with is root 3 tan squared of theta minus 3 tan of theta equals 0. So here you can't factor in two parentheses because you don't have a plain number. So you just take out a tan of theta, And this becomes root 3 tan of theta, because I took out one of those two, minus 3, because I took out that tan, equals 0. All right, so I make both of these sides equal to 0, or this guy equals 0. So the first guy is tan equals 0. We're going to just look at our unit circle, so just wait there. But the second guy is going to be tan of theta, when I add this to this side, equals a positive 3, but then I have to divide by root 3, and I get tan of theta equals 3 over root 3. Well, I can't leave it like that because that has a radical in the basement. So I multiply it by root 3 over root 3, and I get that tan of theta equals 3 root 3 over 3, and the 3's bite the dust, so it equals root 3. Now you're going to go to your unit circle and see who has a tangent of root 3, and that would be 60 degrees and 240. And who has a tangent of 0? That would be 180 and 0 degrees. And those are your 4 answers. Now on this one, I see that the biggest cosine squared is on the right. It would be positive if you moved everything to the right. You see that? It just makes it a little easier. So I'm going to make that equals 4 cosine squared of theta. And when this goes across the bridge, it's a minus 2 cosine squared of theta. When that goes across the bridge, it's a minus 1 and a plus cosine of theta equals 0. So 4 minus 2 is 2, so this is going to be equal to 2 cosine squared of theta plus cosine of theta minus 1 equals 0. And this translates to 2x squared plus x minus 1 equals 0. So what times what is negative 2, and added together is positive 1. And that would be 2 and negative 1. Okay? So we rewrite it as 2x squared minus 1x plus 2x minus 1. I take these two numbers and gunk an x on them and put them down here and then regroup. So we have x and 2x minus 1 and 1. That's not right. And 2x minus 1. So it's x plus 1 and 2x minus 1. Well, now I replace them with cosines, and we have this equals 2 cosine of theta minus 1 and cosine of theta plus 1. So now we're ready to make them each equal to 0. So we have 2 cosine of theta minus 1 equals 0, and cosine of theta plus 1 equals 0. So this is going to be cosine of theta equals 1/2, and cosine of theta equals negative 1. And you go to your unit circle. You go to your unit circle and find the cosine equal to 1/2 is going to be 60 and 300. And the cosine equals negative 1 is going to be 180. And those are your 3 solutions. There is no sine squared or cosine squared, so we're going to move everything to the left side of the equation. We have 2 root 3 sine theta cosine theta minus 2 sine theta plus 5 sine theta equals 0. I just moved this guy to that side of the bridge, making it a plus. And now I can combine those last two, so I have 2 root 3 sine theta cosine theta plus 3 sine theta equals 0. And this isn't a 2 parenthesis factoring, it's a greatest common factor, and what they have in common is a sine of theta. So I'm going to pull him out. When I do that, I have 2 root 3 cosine of theta plus 3, because I pulled out that other sine on both sides. So they disappear. And now I make sine of theta equal to 0, and 2 root 3 cosine of theta plus 3 equal to 0. Sine of theta equals 0 is done, so we just have to look at the unit circle, but let's leave this cosine alone. This is going to be cosine of theta equals -3, and then we have to divide by 2 root 3. And I can't have a radical in the basement, so I multiply by root 3 and root 3, and this needs some simplifying, but it's okay. So you got -3 root 3 upstairs, and downstairs you have a 6. But when I reduce this -3 over 6, I get -root 3 over 2 equals cosine of theta. Sine is a 0 on 180 and 0. And cosine is -3 root 2 on 150 and 210. Cosine's the first number.